Good morning, Sam. You were mentioning something in the office to me the other day about, let's see if I can recap this correctly, tagging HyperBEAM Milestone 3 as final. What does that mean?
Yeah, so in the process of building out AO Mainnet, we essentially had three major phases, which we split into milestones. Uh, and the first of those was, hey, can you do the fundamental execution of AO Core, the new mainnet protocol for AO, in the mainnet environment, which is HyperBeam. And that was back on like February 8th, I believe, last year. And part of that also came with the relaying system, so being able to basically access any HTTP resource, but the main expected usage path at least was accessing a sort of private compute network of legacynet, and also the payment systems on top of that. And for all of this to work, you need the device execution mechanism, the sort of meta virtual machine, as well as a bunch of the individual devices and the caches and like a lot of the core infrastructure has to be in place, but less of the called like application layer or device layer of the stack. And so then there's milestone two, which is okay. So I want to run an AO process, not just an AO core execution. And again, AO core execution, this is the idea that you can basically accumulate a path for any computation in any program by having a universal expression of the messages and their identity. So we use HTTP signed messages, but you can also use ANS 104 messages and also now Arweave transactions themselves as those identifiers. And then you create what is essentially a Merkle list rather than a Merkle tree. And you append to this and you say, okay, I started with this state, and then I added this on top and that on top and that on top. And then I got to this other sort of program state. And this can be an AO process, but it could also just be something that is unscheduled, something that is sort of free running, more like a serverless function in a traditional execution environment. So have that. What if you want to do AO processes with it though? Well, then you need the scheduler device, the process device, and the sort of main execution devices. And so we shipped that with milestone 2, and then I believe just a month later, even a few weeks later. But the big one is, okay, how do we get full legacynet compatibility so that people can move the existing computations that are happening on AO to mainnet? And so that's been a long process, and the team has been working tirelessly that time, and really like credit to them. It's been an incredible build. It's it's a very complex system, and then building it such that it fits with all of the existing stuff on the PermaWeb correctly and elegantly also, so that we don't create problems that decrease development velocity later is really tough, and they managed it. So that's really impressive. But yeah, now we're basically at the end of that process. I think we can more or less tag milestone 3 as complete anytime now. I think we will tag a version of the software and say, hey, this was milestone 3 sort of longer term support version if people would like that. And it's ready kind of now. At the moment, like materially, almost all of the computation that was happening on legacynet has been replaced with HyperBeam nodes. And increasingly, even the GraphQL dependencies that legacynet used. So when it needs to, for example, find a process from legacynet, well, how does it do it? It looks via GraphQL. This used a sort of third-party endpoint, so it's kind of distributed, not decentralized, during the legacynet period. Well, now it can use any HyperBeam node, or actually any set of HyperBeam nodes, in order to do this. And so this has been how legacynet itself is even operating for quite a while now. And so basically, it's like deconstructing legacynet and replacing it while it is on with HyperBeam. And the software is now like complete, and there we've hydrated all of the relevant processes from legacynet and many of the millions that people produce that are not so well used as well. And so that's a pretty big milestone.
It is a big milestone. I can tell you've been working hard because you said February of last year. That was this year, man.
Oh,
You've had a long year. You've had a long year, I know.
we have
So
had a
do we
long year.
drop the milestone? Yeah, we have. do you drop the milestone nomenclature from here? I know we've talked about ideas of what's coming next, for example, LiveNet, the staking marketplace, but is there a milestone for, or do we break it down differently from here?
That's a somewhat open question. I think the milestones gave people a clear sense of like, okay, where are we going in what order in order to get AO processes working in
Mm,
HyperBEAM. But actually, if you understand what HyperBEAM is and what AO Core is, it's much broader than that. That's just
mm,
one sort of vector, which
mm,
requires a certain set of devices to be mature, which we've got to now. But there's I believe like 50 to 60 devices that just we at Forward Research have built so far, and then there's the devices built by Load Network. I think they have at least like 3 to 5, something like that. And Apis has built one. A couple of people from the community have built their own as well. There's like a bunch of these things, and really the central
mm,
idea is, okay, how can you apply verifiable compute to sort of everything a computer can do, everything a computer can offer? Can you then, use the AO core primitives to wrap that, bundle that service, and offer it in such a fashion that it gives verifiability and provable faults to outside parties? And so to put this into some grounded perspective, the DHA team and Odyssey have been working together, and just a few days ago now served a small amount of Arweave.net traffic from HyperBEAM nodes. And so if you happened to be using Arweave.net at that time, and you opened up the network tab of your browser, you would notice that there's a bunch more headers that tell you the hash path of how you got to that piece of data, how that piece of data was generated for you, essentially. And all of the headers, from the original signature of the data that you're seeing are there. And that's like a core piece of the PermaWeb stack that is also addressable using AO Core, that is much wider than the notion of AO processes as they initially begun. This is just generic verifiable compute. And so I think if we had milestones in that way continuing, it would put too much of the focus on one vector where really the usage space is much wider than that. That said, I think we'll have some sort of mechanism of tracking how things are progressing on that milestone. in that, say, pathway, because there's so much to do there as well. It's just that everything is intermixable. The staking system you use for processes, you could also use that for, I think we will at some point, making more effective means of routing to data for Arweave.net. So you can decentralize Arweave.net now. That's a big thing we've been working towards by having TEEs register and say, hey, I'd like to serve some of the traffic. We couldn't do that previously because, well, if it's not in a trusted execution environment, how do we know that the software on the other end being run by that community member is actually correct? Particularly because that community member will speak directly to an end user browser. How do you know each byte is correct? And so now with TEEs, we can do that to a pretty high degree of security. But you might want to route to nodes that you definitely know are online in that environment. You don't want to be sending users to offline nodes. Well, you can reuse that same LiveNet process and device architecture in that environment as well. And so the whole thing is incredibly modular. It's really like a new form of Unix in a way. There are many devices and tools that do one specific thing well, and then you stack them together, and most useful things you can do just become a question of understanding how to configure it, not how to build it.
The AO App Store, I believe, is our catchy phrase for it.
Yeah.
The AO App Store.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Sam, I appreciate your time. It was super edifying. See you around soon.
All right. Thanks, Drew.